Hello, I'm Dan Yu. I'm the VP of Business and Data here at Coinbase.
Uh,
And I'm excited to get to know a lot more about how our engineering team is scaling in this kind of crazy company growth time for crypto. And I want to welcome Jesse Pollak, who's our Director of Engineering for our consumer product, which oversees all of Coinbase.com and Coinbase, our Coinbase mobile apps. So welcome, Jesse.
hey, everybody. Thanks for having me, Dan. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love for you to just maybe give 60 seconds of your life story. Tell us maybe a little bit about yourself, your career, and what brought you here to Coinbase.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm sitting in my home office in West Oakland right now. I actually grew up in DC, moved to LA for college. When I was in college, my second year, I started a identity/security company called Clef. We built passwordless two-factor authentication. And after my second year of college, I actually dropped out to work on that full time. Worked on that for full time for 5 years. We raised a few $1 million of funding, built a team up, and worked with a lot of crypto customers. So folks like Bitfinex, BitMEX were customers of ours. Got to know Coinbase through that process. And when we were looking for kind of the next step, we decided to sell the company. Talked to Coinbase through that process. Eventually ended up selling to Twilio and integrating with their two-factor offering. But I was so excited about Coinbase at the time that when the company sold to Twilio, I decided to join Coinbase. So came to Coinbase, eventually recruited my two former co-founders back and our first engineer. So they're now at Coinbase. And then, yeah, at Coinbase joined when the team working on the consumer product was 3 engineers. Grew it from those 3 engineers to about 70 engineers now. Obviously, a lot of learning and change along the way, and that's what takes us to today.
Wow, crazy path, 3 to 70 engineers. Like that's a lot of change in a short period of time. Well, we're very lucky to have you. I remember that I was just in an orientation class for Coinbase about 7 months ago now, and you articulated like the super compelling mission, vision, strategy of Coinbase. Was wondering if you could share some of that with our guests here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like before I talk about the specifics, just worth framing like what is vision, mission, strategy, those 3 pieces. Vision is kind of like what we imagine the future world to be. Mission is what we're going to do to get it there. And then strategy is how we're actually going to make that world happen. And so as I think about the vision, and this is actually what brought me to Coinbase in the first place, it's really about economic freedom and making it so that there's increased and even economic freedom across the globe. If you look right now, and to define economic freedom right now, the ability to transact easily, to save money, to know that when you save your money, it's not going to deflate in value over time. To start businesses without corruption, and you look across the world right now, those qualities are super unevenly distributed. In countries like the U.S., it's very high economic freedom, but other places, you think Venezuela, Cuba, much lower. If you think about it on the spectrum of like green to red, the world is kind of this green and red all over place. And that means that depending where you're born, where you live, you're just going to have a fundamentally different playing field. And I think our vision for the future is how do we make that entire map green? And our mission, how we want to actually accomplish that, is by building one open financial system that everyone can be a part of. And building that open financial system with cryptocurrency as the underlying global financial protocols that actually power that. So that's kind of the mission. One connected financial system that's open and powered by crypto. And then the strategy, really 2 parts. And the first part starts with investing. If you look at the core of Coinbase, look at what the core of our consumer businesses right now, it's the best place to buy and sell cryptocurrency. And we think about the first part of our strategy as really continuing to enable crypto investing. And the reason that's really important is, when we ask people how did they get into crypto, the vast majority of the folks we're talking to, they say, hey, the first thing I did, my friend told me, hey, I'm into crypto. And I was like, what's this crypto thing? And then the first thing I did was I went to Coinbase and I bought $5. And I didn't know that much about it. But the second I bought it and I owned a piece of that future, I immediately became like interested in learning more. And then I bought some more and then I learned some more. And I tell this joke in our onboarding class that all the people in that room like blacked out, and 5 years later they wake up and they're like in the Coinbase onboarding program after having gone all the way down the crypto rabbit hole. And so I think we think about it, enabling crypto investing as kind of this critical part of bringing people into crypto. The second part of the strategy is really about what we call connecting and growing the crypto economy. And this is all about expanding from just investing to really making this economy that we're operating full feature, and making it so anyone can do any part of their financial life there. And so in the consumer product, what that looks like is this year really expanding from a place where Coinbase is the best place to buy and sell crypto to Coinbase being the best place for you to store your money, to save, to earn, to spend, and have all of those pieces powered by crypto and globally available. And so those two prongs of enabling crypto investing and then connecting and growing the crypto economy are what's going to let us accomplish our mission of building this open global financial system, which will then allow us to accomplish the vision of creating a world where there's even economic freedom and everyone can connect financially.
Yeah, that's just a completely compelling vision, mission, strategy, vision. It captured kind of my imagination as well. I mean, it's such a rare moment where you can find a company that could, where your impact could impact the company, and that company can impact an industry, and that industry can impact the world. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So I'm super psyched to be here. As excited as when you first gave that speech to us when we were in orientation. But yeah, it's definitely played out.
Giving those talks is like my favorite part of my week every week. Getting to see like 20 new people joining the company and getting to talk to them about why we're here and seeing how everyone's faces light up and how everyone's like there for this. I think it's one of the most unique parts about the company.
Yeah, that really resonates because I do remember seeing the folks in my orientation class and their faces lighting up, and even if we had joined and like had gone through that kind of diligence process, like hearing it from somebody who's been in there fighting that battle from early stages, I think it's just it just gets everyone energized to come here every day. On the engineering side, we recently in mid-March, I think over a 2-day period, maybe a 24-hour period, we experienced like this massive spike in volatility. We processed, I think, 2 billion in transactions for crypto, and that beat our previous record by over 50%. And yet, like operationally, we were really rock solid and sound. Can you tell us a little bit about how like Coinbase was able to remain completely operational, and any past learnings that the team can incorporate going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's really two major prongs of this. The first, you mentioned like past learnings the team can incorporate. The first prong is I think in the last 3 years, really starting in the beginning of 2017, we've built an incredibly strong incident management and retrospective process. And what that basically means is when things go wrong at Coinbase, because when you're building engineering systems, inevitably something's going to go wrong. That's just kind of the truism about building systems that are this complicated. And we built this muscle of when things go wrong, how do we respond? And for us, what that looks like is when things go wrong, we create something called incident. What that means is we bring together all the people who are most relevant to solving this problem. We get them in a room, they're on video chat or they're in person. They solve the problem. But what happens after they solve the problem is actually more interesting. Once they solve the problem, then they go through this whole process of doing a really deep root cause analysis. And then everyone actually getting in a room and spending an hour talking about, okay, like, what are we going to do to make it sure that this problem never happens again? How are we going to change our systems? How are we going to change our processes? How are we going to change the way we think, the way we collaborate, the way we communicate? That all gets written up into a document, and then that document actually gets shared with the entire company. 3 years ago, we didn't have any of that muscle. Now we have a really, really well-built muscle that we can rely on. Whenever something goes wrong, we're going to respond to it really thoughtfully. And so recent examples of challenges we faced in the last year, one was Mongo. We used MongoDB as one of our primary databases. We've seen a lot of issues with Mongo connections. When we see large traffic spikes, connecting to the database can overwhelm it, cause issues. We saw those in incidents that caused downtime in the past, and we responded through the retrospectives to that. And I'll talk a little bit about what we did. Another one is AWS reliability. Many people might not know it, but when you have a virtualized AWS instance, the reliability of that instance is about 99.9. And what that means, it seems like a high number, 99.9. What that means is that 43 minutes out of a month, that instance might go down. And so when you're running thousands of instances like we are at Coinbase, you're almost guaranteed to have some of those instances go down. And so we saw, particularly in our trading engine, which is this core piece that always needs to be online in order for us to process transactions, we saw that we were literally just having hardware failures. We learned about that in retrospectives, and then we decided to run a process on it. And so that takes me to the kind of second thing that I think has really set us up for success. And that's us taking those learnings from this retrospective and incident process and turning them into very long-term investments in scaling. And the thing about scaling is it's not something you can do overnight, or it's something you can react to immediately. It's something where you need to say, hey, where do we want to be a year from now? And how do we actually make quarter by quarter investments that get us there? And so on the connection one and on the instance failure one, we actually implemented a really novel solution. So on the connection one, we worked with Mongo to basically bring up a proxy that sits in front of the database. We proxy all of our connections to them. That sits as like a buffer, which basically makes it so we can scale the number of connections really aggressively. It doesn't impact the database. That's a stay up through those big traffic spikes. That was a 3-month-long project. And the crazy thing is it actually shipped the week before that spike in March. And so, if we'd started that the week before, there's no way we would be able to do it. But because we had the retrospective process from an incident 6 months prior, we put in place a plan that would get us there 6 months later. It all worked out, and we were able to get through that with really, really high reliability and availability. On the AWS instance one, we actually ran a 6-month-long project similarly, where we built a whole fault-tolerant system. So rather than having this trading engine, which always needs to be available on one box, we have a consensus protocol that basically has various trading engines on multiple hardware, and then they elect the leader. And if for some reason that leader fails, there's a whole consensus protocol that allows a new leader to get brought up. And that means that even if we have a hardware failure, we're going to be able to keep the exchange up at all times. That's something that's been rolling out and really increasing the reliability of that core exchange and liquidity pool. And so I think those two pieces of, one, running really high quality incidents and having a thorough retrospective process, and then two, folding those learnings into long-term investments is what's allowed us to be so successful on the availability and reliability front.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, just so you know, Jesse, even on the business side, when we were up and the other exchanges were down a month ago, we were to continue our marketing spend. And there was a big dip in marketing spend from our competitors. So we were able to take advantage of that time and then even continue on with investments during these volatile times. And so, yeah, it has a lot of kind of downstream effects, and it all starts kind of at the core of engineering for us.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's great to hear. Yeah, I mean, kind of the topic du jour, our audience is wondering how engineering teams are able to collaborate effectively, while remote. And, I've seen a bunch of stuff that your team has been doing. You guys have been doing a wonderful job at that. Can you share some advice on kind of the new normal and how to maintain, personal and professional productivity during these times? And maybe, how your team been able to work together to maintain that, fully operational platform? And, yeah, like, how are we thinking about continuing pushing on our things like, mobile strategy with React Native? If you could just talk through a little bit of that remote aspect and how that's impacting operations, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely. And to be candid, like, this is something I was really nervous about. And I think, having a sudden shift in how we're all working is scary by itself. But then acknowledging that this isn't just remote work. Like, we're not just remote work in a fun time. It's like, this is remote work in the time of pandemic, when people are getting sick, and like, the world's a pretty scary place. I think for me as a leader and as a member of this team, I was really nervous, like, what impact that was going to have on our group. I've been really, I would say, impressed with how our team has stepped up, and I think it speaks to a lot of the investments we've made over the last few years around communication, around documentation, around working in a really thorough way, that when you then translate that into distributed work, those things which might have felt like nice to haves prior become must haves. And because we already had them in place, the transition was made a little bit easier. So been really impressed with how the team's learned there. I think the biggest thing we've tried to do is just take it one day at a time and really try and embody that value you mentioned of continuous learning, running experiments to see kind of how we can keep intimacy, keep closeness between our folks, keep that collaborative feeling, even as we all are distributed across our homes. So the things I've loved experimenting with, we've been doing these virtual happy hours. We started out by doing on Meet. That doesn't work when you have 30 people, right? You can't have a 30-person meet and have it feel intimate. Then we tried this thing called Icebreaker, which is like a little tool. It matches you up one-on-one, created a ton of intimacy, but we couldn't get that group feel. And so the most recent thing we've been doing for happy hours is we actually have this thing called Online Town, where you get dropped onto a 2D map and you can walk around the 2D map. And as you walk closer to other people, you can see their video and hear their audio. As you walk away from them, you lose them. And so in our consumer org, which is 100 people, and we've gotten probably about 50 people into these at a given time, we can actually approximate what it feels like to have everyone in a room on their computers. And I think that's been awesome, really cool experiment. We've also been experimenting with, our no meeting days, really increasing async communication. So we're doing more status updates and things in a written form. And also thinking about how does this change our like long-term approach to remote work? Can we support it more? Is it something that can be a strength for us? And so I'd say for us, it's just been constant experimentation that's resulted in really, really good results. I think going to the question of mobile, yes, we're full steam ahead. I think just because we've been able to have that success with experimentation and success with continuing to move, we're basically full steam ahead on all of the major initiatives at Coinbase. In mobile particular, as over the last few years, mobile's become the majority of our revenue as a business. So it's a really, really critical part of our long-term strategy. In the last year and a half, we have undertaken a really big initiative to gradually experiment with and then roll out React Native as a new platform for building mobile applications at Coinbase. That effort's full steam ahead. More news soon in the next couple of quarters about how that's going to change kind of the shape of our business and the shape of the product. So for folks who are on the call, maybe interested in mobile, interested in being at the forefront of what it looks like to build products across platforms and do that in a really world-class way, come join us. We're hiring.
Yeah, thanks for all those tips. I think that we've been taking your lead. So we did the Hangouts for the happy hour. We did Icebreakers, which was great to kind of know folks kind of intimately on more one-on-one. And then Brian Armstrong has been telling folks to do the same. I think the online town concept, which seems really cool. And I've also really enjoyed, you write these like top of mind emails every Friday. It's kind of a really inspirational bit that brings the group in together, has a theme. Has humanity that is helping us connect where we're not connected in person. Yeah. And so I really appreciated reading those as well. Maybe a little bit on just how, getting back to the mission and vision, just how the engineering team has been able to contribute to the mission vision strategy of Coinbase.
I'd say most recently, I think just adapting, like applying that value of continuous learning and adapting to make sure that we can continue serving our customers and providing real financial stability when the world has started to be turned upside down. So I think that's a really awesome one. Another one is, I think as an engineering team, we've invested a ton in international expansion over the last year. Places we've launched this year, places we're going to launch in the year ahead. I think getting Coinbase in more countries, getting more people an easy on-ramp into crypto, really increasing that accessibility is critical to a long-term mission and vision strategy. The engineering teams are driving that effort day to day in terms of building those systems, in terms of making our product localized to hundreds of languages, really be available and not just English translated, but like world-class available in those countries. And then I'd say the third one that really stands out to me is engineering. We've really invested in kind of like, how do we build programs that instill those values to set our org up for long term? And one of the programs we've built recently is this thing called Bootcamp. The Coinbase, every engineer that starts goes through a 4-week program called Bootcamp. It's a mix of getting to be in like hands-on workshops with a bunch of our most senior, most tenured engineers, where they talk to you about how do we build XYZ systems, how do we do observability, how do we use Ruby, whatever topics we believe are most important for engineers to be successful. And then also it's this 4-week period where you basically get to work with a mentor who's another senior engineer at the company, across a number of different products and fix things, deliver customer impact, but really learn. And so maybe you're a backend engineer, you get to experiment with shipping some mobile tickets. Maybe you're a mobile engineer, you get to experiment with shipping some web tickets. We want to instill that from the beginning. We act like owners. We collaborate. We're one team. We're one Coinbase working together to bring about this mission vision strategy. And Bootcamp, this new program that we've been building over the last 6 months, is really this way of, from the moment someone starts, us reminding everyone, hey, we're all in this together. And this is a place where you can experiment, where you can learn, and where you can build those skill sets that will allow you to be impactful, like no matter where you are, and to collaborate with everyone who you need to in order to get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, I love that one Coinbase concept, and maybe jumping ahead to one of the questions that we got from the engineering folks out there is, how do we like prevent ourselves from like replicating multiple things in different places, and with a 1,000-person company, which is 40% engineers, what are the things that we're doing so that we are reducing tech debt and having a little bit more of that one Coinbase concept?
Yeah. And I think it's really hard. And it's also, if you think about kind of standardization and deduplication, I think it's always a spectrum, right? You can be on one end of that spectrum where you're like, everyone's going to build everything like a unique, snowflake. And that has its problems. You can also be on the other end of the spectrum where everyone builds everything the same way, and there's no innovation and there's no experimentation, and we're all building on kind of like a slowly dying platform, right? And so I think the balance is, how do you give people the space to innovate in set systems, while also, when you find those commonalities, really challenging people to figure out what's the right bit to standardize there, and make sure that we are really embodying the one Coinbase value. And I actually think all of this starts with the values. We actually did an exercise about a year and a half ago to figure out what are our engineering principles, and that's where the term one Coinbase came from. Prior to that, we had seen all of this kind of rapid fragmentation in engineering. And we as an engineering group, when we decided to create principles, we said, hey, this is something that we're concerned about. And we can make a bunch of technical, tactical changes. But in order for us to really have this work, we need to change our culture. And so we said, hey, we want the value of one Coinbase to be a principle. Started a year and a half ago. It's now bled into the rest of the company. People say one Coinbase all the time. And it's this funny thing where something that starts in engineering can kind of get adapted and can change the shape of our business. So I'd say it starts culturally, and then I'd say the next part is really figuring out what are the most important things for us to invest in where we do want to have that shared platform. Mm-hmm. Two of the ones that jump to mind for me are React Native. You called out earlier. This is a really amazing opportunity where we can say, hey, if we build one really strong JavaScript platform, that's going to allow us to build faster on web. It's going to allow us to build faster on mobile. It's going to allow us to build faster on any new product that we want to start. It's going to allow us to collaborate more effectively across our pro product and our consumer product. A recent example of this is in Q4, Q1, we built a whole new onboarding experience in React Native. We shipped it in our consumer product, and then we literally linked that library into the pro app, shipped it in the pro app. We get one onboarding experience. It works on iOS and Android. It works on pro and consumer. And I think that value of like 4 for 1 is an amazing example where the bang for the buck that you get from standardization is huge. Another one is, as we started to build services, we've seen, hey, there's a ton of commonality here. We're using protobufs. We're generally using Go. We want to have the right logging, tracing, all of those pieces. And so we built a really thin layer on top of gRPC and protobufs. We call it the Coinbase Service Framework, or CSF. And now it's the way everyone builds services, and everyone's kind of contributing upstream to make this platform better and better. Still a ton of innovation going elsewhere, but it is this place where, because we're all building services that need to communicate with each other, having standardization there allows us to make sure that the defaults are really good, and allows someone to start from day one with an idea, and day two already have the foundation that will let them have that idea be scalable, reliable, available in the same way as we expect for all of our software at Coinbase.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, and then maybe, given that you're you oversee all the consumer end side of Coinbase, how did the new trends in consumer behavior affect kind of the upcoming engineering initiatives or things that you are working on right now?
Yeah, I mentioned the mobile revenue one. I think we see more and more mobile, and so for us, mobile is our #1 engineering focus. Just making sure that our mobile products are not just good, they're actually world class is top focus for us. I also say that even bleeds into kind of how we build product. So if you go into the Coinbase app today, although this may still be an experiment, you'll actually see, if you go onto an asset page, you can tap a thing that says, hey, you want to learn more about how to invest? It'll pop up a thing that looks like Instagram. It's actually like an Instagram story in the Coinbase app, which talks to you about how to do dollar cost averaging, which is a really thoughtful, measured way of investing that has really good results. And we had that entire experience inspired by what Instagram and Snapchat have done with stories. And we brought that into a place where that would never normally be present, a financial product. But I think it's this really interesting way of how culture and technology is happening in the mainstream consumer behavior does bleed into the products that we're building. So there's a million more examples, but those are two that come to mind.
Great. And then maybe before our lightning round, any favorite or memorable moments since working from home started, shelter in place?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Friday emails that I send out. One that really stands out to me is like last Friday. I feel like I'd sent 5 emails before where I was just like, some variation of, hey, this is really hard. And this is really hard. We're in this situation where we're all in our houses. There's a lot of fear. And last Friday I went on a walk. It was so beautiful outside. And I was just struck by like how much joy even just being outside was giving me. And so I sent out this email that was like, hey, I went on this walk. I felt a lot of joy. I wanted to share 3 things that have brought me joy in the last couple weeks or 6 weeks. And they were making cookies with my partner consistently, eating food from my garden. We grow arugula. It's my favorite food. We planted it 6 weeks ago. Now we're eating it in for dinner. And then starting to really work out more. I've been riding my indoor bicycle every day. And that's the first time I've ever had a real like everyday fitness practice. And it's been huge and brought me a ton of joy. And I sent this out to the org and I was like, hey, if anyone else would be willing to share, I would love to hear it. And over the next 2 hours, we had like 25, 30, 40 people out of a 70-person org reply, and everyone listed 3 things that had brought them joy. And I spent, an hour and a half just reading through all of them, like emailing people back. And a funny story is one person referenced the beach that they'd been to that had brought them a lot of joy. That night, that Friday, I went to that beach, most beautiful beach I've ever been to, Thornton State Beach in Daly City. And then I went back on Saturday because it was so beautiful. Saturday evening for sunset again. And I thought it was this amazing deal of like putting joy out into the world, getting it back, and then having that change my life in like a meaningful way for the weekend. Really just this moment that felt pretty special.
Awesome. Incredible. Yeah. And very inspiring. Maybe getting a little more tactical. What do you have any recommendations for materials to study the technical side of blockchain for our audience?
Yeah, and we can blow through these ones because I know we're over time a little bit. But 2 things that I always recommend to people. So the book that got me into crypto, Mastering Bitcoin, just an amazing like half technical, half high level reference of how Bitcoin the protocol works, but also what impact it can have on the world. Like canonical reference for crypto, Mastering Bitcoin. And the second one is I listen to a podcast called Epicenter pretty much every week. Just an amazing overview of different projects going on in crypto, really thoughtful interviewers, folks come on there and share a bunch of really interesting insights. So that's my kind of like constant drip of information about how crypto is evolving.
And then what is the #1 security challenge in securing Coinbase?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's got like the thing about crypto is that it's unreversible, right? And so if you have your money in your bank account, right? And someone steals your money in your bank account, like there's a bunch of systems built up there and all of them are able to be adjusted so that you can basically pull that money back in and it'll be okay. The thing about crypto is if the crypto leaves your bank account in Coinbase, like it's not coming back. There's no recourse there, right? Because crypto is this immutable ledger. And the cool thing about immutable ledgers is it's really easy to go from immutable to mutable if you build the right systems on top of it. It's really hard to go from mutable to immutable, which is one of the challenges we see in our existing banking system. But I think that immutability presents this increased risk constantly of like any mistake could lead to a huge impact to our business. And so I think we just have to be extra cautious. We have to think really carefully through how do we store all of our crypto in a really secure way. We've built a whole system for cold storage that we keep 99.9+% of our assets in, that requires human intervention. It's geographically distributed, all sorts of things. I think it's all about making sure that those irreversible transactions never actually happen.
Awesome. And then maybe finally for our recruiting team, like, is affected here by cryptocurrency with the COVID-19, and are any jobs or intern conversion rates affected here at Coinbase?
Yeah, I mean we're going like 110% strong. We're hiring full steam ahead. I have, I think, 20 open roles in my org alone. I think we have about 150 open engineering roles at the company, as compared to about 350 engineers already in seats. We have 50 interns joining us this summer from engineering. They're going to be all distributed across the country, and so that's going to be an experience running a distributed intern program. We also have about 30 to 50 new grads starting in the next 3 months, and so we're full steam ahead. We're hiring people across pretty much every part of the engineering stack. And if anyone on this call is interested, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, Jesse Pollak, or shoot me an email, jpollak@coinbase.com. We'd love to connect, chat to you about what we're working on, and hopefully have you come join us in our mission to build a open financial system for the world.
Absolutely. And with that, we'll end our first virtual fireside chat. Jesse, thanks so much. It's been great chatting with you during these times. Great learning more about you, and great learning more about our engineering challenges and successes here at Coinbase. So thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Dan.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, all.